They will be of rain, but snow showers in northern Scotland. Temperatures back up a touch, but feeling colder. This low pressure system then heading through the North Sea, bringing those very strong winds on Friday across the north, but more widely across the country on Saturday. So we have Met Office yellow warnings in place. Gusts of 50, 60 miles an hour, maybe 70, possibly around some exposed coast, 80 miles an hour. Could cause some disruption. So keep up to date with the forecast. The warnings are on the Met Office website.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Good morning, everyone. You're watching To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christie's, and Mercy Muroki. We're here all the way through until midday with loads of topics for you to get stuck into.
Yes, and make sure you get in touch with your views, gbviews@gbnews.uk, and we'll be reading those out throughout the show. But first, let's give you the latest news.
Good morning, I'm Rosie Wright. This is your news at 11 o'clock. A border force boat with 10 migrants on board and a lifeboat carrying up to 50 migrants have arrived in Dover this morning. It comes after a boat capsized yesterday and 27 people died trying to make the crossing. It's the worst incident of its kind in the Channel since the current migrant crisis began. The Prime Minister is calling for joint police patrols in the Channel with France to try to stop migrant crossings. Former head of UK Border Force Tony Smith told GB News that people smugglers are currently winning the battle, not the government.
I think two civilised countries like the UK and France, both signatories, founder members, if you like, of the 51 Convention, should first and foremost agree a strategy that's going to stop to save lives and to put the smugglers out of business. At the moment, they're winning this because the business model is such that, well, all you've got to do is give me €5,000, get in this little boat, and they don't care about human life. I've dealt with them myself. They don't care about human life. They're just interested in the money.
Energy supplier Bulb is to be given nearly £1.7 billion in government support after the company collapsed earlier this week. The public financing will ensure its 1.6 million customers continue to receive their energy. The company was put into special administration on Wednesday, meaning it can continue to operate until a potential buyer can be found or until its customers leave. A 34-year-old man is going to appear in court today in connection with the death of a couple in Somerset. Colin Reeves has been charged with the murders of Jennifer and Stephen Chappell. The couple were killed at home as their children slept upstairs on Sunday. A second man, aged 67, was arrested on suspicion of the two murders and was released under investigation on Tuesday. More than 5,500 alerts of sewage being discharged into coastal waters were issued by water companies last year, a new report has found. The campaign group Surfers Against Sewage found that 1 in 6 days out of the official bathing season were unswimmable last year because of pollution near beaches. Well, that marks an 87% increase on last year's figure. The government's expected to give the green light on proposals for English football's independent regulator. It was the key recommendation of the fan-led review that was commissioned in April after the European Super League row. 6 English Premier League clubs formed part of the breakaway before pulling out of the plans after significant backlash. Well, the UK Sports Minister, Nigel Huddleston, has promised to move as quickly as possible to bring forward any legislation needed. First-time buyers face having to pay, on average, 5.5 times their annual typical salary to get onto the property ladder. A nationwide study has found that breaks the previous record in 2007 and is significantly higher than the historical average of your salary being 3.8 times the value of a house. Figures confirm that London continues to have the highest price-to-earnings ratio. Adverts for cosmetic procedures to change a person's physical appearance, they're going to be banned for under 18s from May of next year. Companies will no longer be able to advertise procedures like breast augmentation and nose reshaping during television programmes that are likely to appeal to under 18s. The Committee of Advertising Practice says young people are vulnerable to body image pressures and that negative perceptions could have an impact on their mental health. And a Roman mosaic has been found in a farmer's field in Rutland. The artwork depicts the famous Battle of the Trojan War, and it dates back to the 3rd or 4th century AD. It's one of only a handful of mosaics like it across Europe, and because of its rarity, it's now going to receive special protection. You are up to date. I'll be back with your latest headlines in half an hour. Now, though, back to the point.
Good morning, you're watching To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Moroki, and Patrick Christie's, and we're here with you until midday, giving you the big stories of the day and our opinions on them. So here's what's on the menu for the next hour.
Well, after at least 27 people drowned in the Channel yesterday, the UK and France have agreed on the need for cooperation. We'll be with our Home and Security Editor, Mark White, to get the latest on that.
Yes, and for our feature, The Controversy, today, sexual health experts say children as young as 11 are learning about sex from pornography. So just how big is our society's porn problem? We'll discuss a bit later.
And a Norwegian Christmas advert has given Santa a boyfriend in a move that has been described as beautiful, powerful, progressive. Why has Mrs. Claus been shelved? That's what I want to know.
Yes, so we have all of that coming up and much more across the programme. And get in touch with your views, GB views at gbnews.uk, and we'll read those out across the next hour. But first, Patrick gives his views on the NHS.
Our NHS is getting creative. It's trying to do what people in middle management call blue sky thinking. They're getting out of the box. I'm honestly not making this up, by the way. This is a real thing that's potentially about to happen. Handymen will be sent round to fix drafty and mouldy homes in a bid to reduce pressure on overstretched hospitals. The teams, a collaboration between the NHS and local councils, combine GPs, nurses, social workers and plumbers. Town halls would pay for any repair work, not the health service. NHS England wants all areas of the country to provide a comprehensive service by next April. The work they may do involves fitting handrails to prevent falls among the elderly, or cleaning mould from the walls to improve breathing problems among children. Maintenance units could also fix leaks or seal drafts. Now, part of me genuinely thinks this is a really good idea. I mean, it is a bit, isn't it? Things like damp, poor disabled facilities in the home, drafts. They do make vulnerable people ill, and they do end up in hospital. Our hospitals are supposedly overwhelmed. I mean, when are they not? But they are. Ambulance waiting times are up. GP appointments are like hen's teeth. If we can sort out issues with vulnerable people's homes that gives them a better quality of life and less chance of getting sick, then I'm all for it. There is a bit of an issue, though. How do we pay for it? Apparently, home repairs are going to come out of local councils' budgets, so basically that means more tax, doesn't it? All of a sudden now, you're getting taxed twice, aren't you? One, to pay for the health and social care budget. Then again, to pay for, well, essentially the health and social care budget. So there's that. But there's another NHS creativity project that's taking place. although I fear it may be a similar creativity project to the one carried out by Frankenstein. There are plans to scrap tens of millions of unnecessary hospital follow-up appointments. I think unnecessary is in the eye of the beholder, isn't it, really? What an NHS pencil pusher may regard as unnecessary, Shelley from number 42 might regard as being absolutely flipping vital for her personal health. Health service leaders in England are finalising a radical plan under which hospital consultants will undertake far fewer outpatient appointments and instead perform more surgery to help cut the NHS backlog and long waits for care that many patients experience. It's been called the Elective Recovery Plan. Under the plan, patients who've spent time in hospital will be offered only one follow-up consultation in the year after their treatment, rather than the 2 or 3 or even 4 that they might get now. One bright idea for still making sure that people can get a follow-up appointment if they want one is by allowing them to use an app to let their hospital know that they're sufficiently worried about their own health and that they want to see a doctor sooner than their next scheduled appointment. I mean, it's a bit of a joke, this. I mean, we might as well just cut to the chase, frankly, and make old people perform their own surgeries. A call handler could just talk them through it, couldn't they, on the phone? This is just sweeping stuff under the carpet. We have a broken NHS, an unworkable system, and when we're having to resort to putting draft blockers up in people's homes and making sure they use technology that they can't understand to beg for a checkup, I think we have to acknowledge that it's not really fit for purpose, is it? Yeah, the home improvements element of it, I mean, look, it's going to cost. It's always going to cost. And local councils are always hiking tax and always going on about how cash-strapped they are. So we're going to end up seeing tax hikes in your local area as a result of this. Is it the worst idea in the world, though? You know?
It's not. It's not. The NHS is already, you know, we're already spending so much on the NHS budget. I think 40-something, I can't remember the latest figure, but we spend so much on it, and I worry that the state is becoming just far too big for its own good. And it almost, we expect the state to do everything for us now, don't we? We want them to, you know, obviously there's the basic things like welfare and health, but more and more things are coming under that bracket. And I'm not personally comfortable with expanding the state so much, especially when the tax burden is already at its highest for, you know, ordinary people, basically, their income tax. I don't want, and national insurance tax, of course, which has been increased to pay for health and social care as well. I don't want people to carry on paying more tax infinitely just to fund what is obviously, to me, it seems like a broken healthcare system that can't have enough cash thrown at it. It needs fundamental reform.
Yeah, and it's all very well and good throwing money at things like making sure people's homes aren't drafty, making sure there's no mould there, making sure they've got handrails. I think those are all good things, right? Yeah. And there are question marks as to exactly how much money that would cost us. So, you know, we'll have to wait and see with that one. But if, at the end of the day, it's not fixing the big issues, which is that people are still waiting a huge amount of time for an ambulance, people, if it turns up at all, people are waiting a huge amount of time for routine surgeries. People are waiting a very long time for quite immediate surgeries. In fact, they're having to pay for them themselves in some cases. Hospital waiting times, of course, are through the roof. It's not GPs face-to-face appointments. It's all very well and good putting a handrail up in Ethel's front room, but it's not actually fixing the bigger problem, is it?
Yeah, and they're just, I dread the day I ever need to actually go into hospital nowadays. I mean, my mum was in hospital just a couple of days ago, and I think she was there for about 8 hours while she got all the checks that she needed to do, as in waiting. She only needed a few tests, but it just took so long. And I just dread actually being somebody who is in desperate need of proper healthcare, because clearly people aren't getting it. Clearly our NHS is really just not doing what it's supposed to do at this moment in time. No, not a health service, some would say. Anyway, just moving away from that now, dozens of people have unfortunately drowned after a migrant boat sunk while attempting to cross the Channel. France's Interior Minister says that 5 women and 1 child are among the 27 known to have drowned, while 2 people have been rescued. Yes, the International Organisation for Migration says it's the biggest single loss of life in the Channel since it began collecting data in 2014. And this comes as 47,000 migrants have attempted the crossing since January the 1st of this year. Prime Minister Boris Johnson and French President Emmanuel Macron have agreed to do everything possible to stop the gangs responsible for putting people's lives at risk. Well, GBNews' Home and Security Editor Mark White joins us now from Dover. Thank you very much, Mark. What's the very latest there, then, where you are?
Well, still the migrants have been coming this morning. Not too many though, because the conditions in the channel today are absolutely horrific. It's blowing quite a bit, at least 20 knots in the middle of the channel, some fairly high waves, so just not at all really doable for anything but the sturdiest of these boats. There were 2 boats that were intercepted. Those on board picked up and brought ashore here. About 60 in total, we think, today so far. It's possible others may be pushed out by the people traffickers in the course of the day, but as I say, it is not the kind of day where we're expecting many. Yesterday was a different story. The weather conditions had improved to the extent where we had boat after boat getting out into the English Channel. We were there. We chartered a boat to go out into the middle of the water there to see these small boats coming through into British territorial waters. We didn't have to wait long. It was first light when we saw a smallish boat about 7 meters long, 22 people on board that vessel, so packed out with people, mainly men, but 2 women and a child as well. They switched off their motor. They wanted the rescue services to be called, and the skipper of our vessel had to do that. He's duty bound to do that, but it took about an hour and a half before the rescue services reached the people on that boat, because they were dealing with back-to-back calls out in the channel of other migrant boats that had been spotted coming across. Now, the boat that we saw had come from a stretch of beach between Calais and Dunkirk, the very same stretch of beach where the boat that capsized had come from just a few hours later, on the same route across the channel, but didn't quite make it into British waters. It was just on the French side of the English Channel when we understand that this inflatable, which was 9 meters long, started to deflate, and those on board were obviously then tossed into the water. Now, the make of inflatable that we understand was used is a very cheap and cheerful made in China 9-meter inflatable boat. They are prone, even when they're tied up here at the harbour in Dover, to exploding, bursting in the sun, and of course packed out with, we're told, more than 30 people on board a 9-meter long inflatable that is not a robust inflatable, then it was perhaps inevitable that it would give way, that the seams would crack and it would start deflating, and that appears to be what happened. Utterly horrific.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on, I know last time that we were speaking a little bit about the boats and the procurement of boats, things like that. There was another thing that I was discussing earlier that I'd like your opinion on, which is about these people smuggling gangs. Now, as we understand it, obviously the French authorities arrested several of them yesterday, as far as we're aware, remarkably quickly, considering that they were unable to stop them apparently operating before that. So, what do you know about these gangs? Are they actually run by people sitting in towers somewhere in various other countries around Europe, or what? Because there are some reports today that some of them might be operating in London, for example. Who are these people?
Yeah, I mean, the upper echelons of these people smuggling gangs are the Mr. Bigs. Absolutely, people at the very highest level of organised crime that are behind these operations. Of course, the individual people smugglers on the ground are made up often of migrants themselves who come across and actually are then sucked into what for them is a very lucrative trade, not as lucrative as it is for the gang masters and those people at the top of these organised crime groups, but still they are making a living, and it's people from Iraq and Iran and in Vietnam, we understand, also from Albania. They were among those that were arrested, rounded up in the last couple of days by the National Crime Agency and their French counterparts. I should say though, Patrick, these arrests of people smugglers happen relatively frequently. They do nip it in the bud in terms of getting odd gang members rounded up, but for every one of them they take off and put into the prison system, then there is someone willing and able to take their place. It seems a never-ending cycle of misery pushing out these people into the English Channel in very dangerous conditions.
Thank you very much, Mark. Mark White there, our Home and Security Editor, live for us in Dover, as indeed he will be throughout the day. Mark, thank you very much. Well, yeah, shocking stuff early, obviously, what's happening there. And the fact is, we had Mark told us earlier on that they already had at least 50 in his views. I mean, I think it's all the boat coming in. So at least 50 come in today. This is after what happened yesterday. So the fact that people are dying in the Channel, have died in the Channel, doesn't appear to be putting these people off still coming. And therefore, doesn't appear like it's going to be much of a deterrent. So again, it's on to us, isn't it, and the French to take action.
Yeah, it is quite shocking. And as Mark said there as well, the weather's horrendous. I mean, the waters are very choppy, and of course, added to that, the temperatures are very low. And you just have to think if these people who obviously are desperate to come into Britain have just witnessed, not directly, of course, but have just witnessed 22 people who they might have known, who knows, come into this country or try and get into this country and drown in the Channel. And the very next morning, they're still willing to get on one of the same sorts of vessels, these rubber dinghies, and still try and make it here. It begs the question about how desperate and why they are so desperate to be fleeing from France, which many, are always keen to remind others that it is a safe country. So clearly France is not doing its duty as well to ensure that the well-being of these people is upheld, because they're that desperate.
Absolutely. Alan's been in touch and he's hit both of the points that I think, anyway, personally, as a country, we now need to be focusing on. We're not going to get any help out of the French government, it looks like. We're not going to end up getting value for our money for the 58 million big ones that we've sent them to stop these boats. It doesn't look like the French are going to let us set foot on their beaches with British troops. So the two things that I think as a country we can do is stop the manufacturing and procurement of these boats and go after the people smuggling gangs. And this is exactly what Alan's saying. Alan, you're a man after my own heart. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you for your views, and keep them coming in, GBviews at gbnews.uk. But after the break, do young Britons suffer from an oversaturation of internet porn? Well, we'll be speaking about that after the weather, and we'll be asking whether porn is ruining young people's perception of sex and relationships. Stay with us for that.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello. This morning, the Met Office have named Storm Arwen. It's arriving through Friday and lingering into the weekends. Warnings have been issued, including amber warnings across parts of the northeast of England and eastern Scotland. The storm system has really yet to form, but it is drifting southwards over the next 24 hours. And the worst effects will be on Friday afternoon as the isobars squeeze together. Very strong winds across northern Scotland initially, but strong winds developing almost everywhere by the end of Friday. Back to this afternoon, and, well, for many, it's a fine day out there, dry and sunny. There's a cold wind blowing, bringing a few showers across eastern England and a few for Pembrokeshire and Cornwall, and some wintry showers in northern Scotland. But otherwise, largely dry and bright, but it is cold. Temperatures 5 to 8 degrees. Add on that wind, and it feels even colder. It's through this evening we'll start to see the effects of the storm system arriving. Initially a band of rain pushing in with some snow over the hills across Scotland for a time. That zone of wet weather will then sink southwards during the night and become more extensive on Friday. Ahead of it, with clear skies, there will be a frost across the southeast, but quickly it'll cloud over on Friday morning, making for a grey, cold, fairly damp day with outbreaks of rain for most places, but the rain turning increasingly to snow over the hills of Scotland. And then the winds really start to pick up on Friday afternoon across the far north, with frequent sleet and snow showers and the gusty winds strengthening further. Temperatures a touch higher tomorrow, but it's still going to feel cold, especially as that wind picks up late in the day. Potential for damaging gusts of wind across the north and east of Scotland, especially on Friday afternoon and evening. And then through the evening, the winds strengthen further over northeast England, but also across north and west Wales, Northern Ireland and the west coast of Scotland. So Storm Arwen on the way, widespread gusts, disruption is possible. Keep up to date with the forecast. The warnings are on the Met Office website.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK, the world, and our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We're here for you. Don't forget to join our community by hitting the subscribe button.
And download the GB News app so you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
Now, primary school students are learning about sex from pornography, a sexual health expert has warned. An increasing number of children, some as young as 11 years old, have already been exposed to online pornography.
Well, sexual health specialist Dr. Kate Howells has warned that for some children, they're learning about violent sex before the context of being in a caring relationship, warning it could have a massive detrimental effect on young people if it isn't addressed.
Yes, so today on our feature, The Controversy, we're going to discuss this. Is there a problem with porn amongst primary school-aged children? Well, Dr. Kathleen Richardson is a professor of ethics and culture at De Montfort University, and she's also a feminist campaigner who wants to stop the objectification of women through technology. So just tell us what your initial reaction to this is, this story that some children, primary school age, are actually learning about violent sex before they even sort of understand sex and relationships in a more holistic way.
Again, thank you for having this conversation. I think it's really important. And of course, that's what's going on. People have been saying this for years and years, that actually children are getting younger and younger and they're getting exposed to what pornography is. And I just want to make it clear, I do not think pornography is sex. What pornography represents is the graphic subordination of primarily women and girls, but also men and boys and animals. It's about domination and submission. It's not about empathy or reciprocity. It's not about emotional connection. It's about none of those things. And it should come as no surprise then that the term porn is an ancient brothel slave So the whole word, comes from this kind of dehumanization. The whole history and genealogy of it comes from dehumanization. What's happening now, obviously, we have internet devices. Everyone has access to the internet. Children at younger and younger ages are accessing devices, which is just one click away from this kind of graphic subordination that is pornography.
I understand that, but
children,
just to interject quickly, sorry. It's a really tricky one, this, isn't it? Because people like me sit here every day and stop talking and say things like, we shouldn't be like trying to sexualise children's education at a younger age. And normally with that kind of stuff, I'm talking about, telling them about things, whether or not they're born into the wrong body and this kind of stuff. But then if they are going to go and watch things online, and they could be, let's be honest, watch anything online, especially these days, the kids have been raised with iPads, haven't they? They've been raised with iPhones and all of this stuff. They can work them completely. Then what do we do? Do we have sex education for 8-year-olds?
I think you make a good point. I mean, there is terrible confusion about what constitutes sex and even relationship and, what is our identity, and even terms like sex. I mean, as in sex bodies are now up for question. So I think this is actually all because part of it comes from the way we understand sex and sexuality in our society. What we seem to have is it's less about people and their connections with each other and more about some pornographer's point of view that's disseminated over the internet. How do we have a conversation? Well, I think we've really got to say parents have to step up with this. They have to take responsibility. But unfortunately, I'm of the generation, I would have been the first generation exposed to pornography by videotape. So, you've now got successive generations who from young ages have been exposed to pornography. And as parents, they think it's harmless and it's not having an impact. Well, we know it's having an impact. All the reports tell us it's having an impact. It's having an impact on the children because they're learning about their sexual responsiveness in this very graphic and dehumanized way. They think that's what actually how you're meant to have a sexual interaction with someone. It's having a knock-on effect in terms of sexual harassment of girls in school. Girls themselves, it's having a knock-on effect because they're like wanting to objectify their body and look more pornographic in how they present themselves to the world, which is resulting in surgery and cosmetic surgeries. And then it's having an impact on us as adults because then we find, the way that adults are having relationships is informed by these more negative sexist attitudes. I do think we have to, as parents need to be involved in the conversation about what's happening to their children. And I don't think, I know parents are under a lot of stress, but it really has to start with them. And I think what's happening is that the state and schools are taking the roles that parents really should have over the lives of their own children.
That's a good note to leave it on. Parents should definitely stay on top of what their children are watching, especially if they're being left alone with devices. Dr. Kathleen Richardson there, Professor of Ethics and Culture at De Montfort University.
Yes, indeed. Well, it's a fascinating topic, really, but after the break, a new report suggests that a double vaccination may not even be enough to prevent COVID infection. Who'd have thought it, hey? Our East Midlands reporter, Will Hollis, joins us to discuss whether a third vaccination will be necessary. Have you seen? There's a new variant as well. It's the Botswana variant. Oh, and there's another variant on top of that, but it's totally symptomless, so we should all be absolutely terrified. But before that, it's time for a look at this morning's news with Rosie Wright.
Good morning, I'm Rosie Wright. Let's get you up to date. A Border Force boat with 10 migrants on board and a lifeboat carrying up to 50 migrants arrived in Dover this morning. It comes after a boat capsized yesterday and 27 people died trying to make the crossing. It's the worst incident of its kind in the Channel since the current migrant crisis began. The Prime Minister's calling for joint police patrols in the Channel with France to try to stop the migrant crossings. The government is going to give energy supplier Bulb nearly £1.7 billion after the company collapsed earlier this week. The public financing will ensure its 1.6 million customers continue to receive energy. The company was put into special administration on Wednesday, meaning it can continue to operate until a potential buyer can be found or until its customers leave. A 34-year-old man is going to appear in court today in connection with the death of a couple in Somerset. Colin Reeves has been charged with the murders of Jennifer and Stephen Chappell. The couple were killed at their home as their children slept upstairs on Sunday. First-time buyers face having to pay, on average, 5.5 times their typical annual salary just to get on the property ladder. A nationwide study has found it breaks the previous record in 2007, and it's significantly higher than the historical average of a house being 3.8 times your annual salary. Well, those figures confirm that London continues to have the highest price-to-earnings ratio. And a Roman mosaic has been found in a farmer's field in Rutland. The artwork depicts the famous Battle of the Trojan War, and it dates back to the 3rd or 4th century AD. It's one of only a handful across Europe, and because it's so rare, it's now going to receive special protection. You're right up to date here on GB News. I'll be back with all of the headlines at 12 o'clock.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Yes, well, the effectiveness of some COVID vaccines could begin to fade as little as just 90 days after your second shot. That's according to a new Israeli study of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine.
Experts found that the risk of infection from coronavirus increased after 3 months, indicating the need for another dose of the vaccine. And this comes as the British government continues to encourage people aged 40 and over to get the jab.
Well, with more on this story is our East Midlands reporter, Will Hollis, who joins us now. Will, which vaccines does this apply to? Or is it all kinds of vaccines affected? What's really going on here?
Now, this particular study relating to this Israeli research centre, this one's been particularly looking at Pfizer. So essentially what it is around 8,000 people who had a positive COVID test over a period of time compared to 8,000 people who had a negative test. They assessed the data, they looked at it. Under 90 days, about 1% of people were likely to catch COVID. Over 90 days, it moved up to 2%, so already a very small change there. And after 180 days, it turned up to something like 15%. So it showed that gradually over time, the effectiveness of the second dose in as early as 90 days, it does start to wane, and it does start to get a little bit more likely that even if you have had a COVID vaccine, that you're at risk of infection.
Doesn't this just mean the prospect of endless booster jabs every couple of months? What are the implications of this?
Yeah, so that's a really important point. I think it is key to remember that the flu the flu jab is something that a lot of people choose to and decide is the best thing for them to get every year, because you're not protected from flu all the way throughout the year. Obviously, over the year and summer, it gets a bit warmer. You're less likely to get infected from something like that. But over that period of time, it is likely that your vaccine has wore off, and that's something that the World Health Organization and SAGE have been saying throughout. I think what we refer back to, though, is that period just before summer when everybody was really keen to get out of those lockdowns, was really keen to get down to the pub, was to go out on holidays. Maybe some people felt like the second vaccine, going and doing your duty for Britain, getting out there, getting your double jab was going to be the end of it, when in actual fact these things are ongoing. And in reality, if we are going to be living with COVID for the next decades and years to come, for generations to come, it seems that those boosters are going to become a key part of our lives. Now, it's important to remember as well where we are in the yearly calendar. We're just about to delve into Christmas. As soon as it's December the 1st, people will be chucking on all their Christmas trees. I'm sure, Patrick, you probably already started on your Christmas snap. And what the government is saying is, if you want to protect your family at Christmas, now is the time to get your booster. So who can get that booster jab? Well, you have to be over 40. People in the older age brackets have already been invited. 15 million of them have already chosen to get their vaccine, to get their third booster vaccine, as well as you have to be have had that second vaccine 6 months ago. So there are a few requirements. There's a couple of things either side for health and things like if you're in a care home and you're going to be getting your flu vaccine, you can get it if you've had your second dose 5 months ago. They'll make some exceptions for that, but yeah, they're really focused on that 40 age group, that kind of middle of the ground where some people might think that, yeah, I don't need a vaccine, I don't need a booster shot, I've already had it, when in actual fact those numbers do rack up, and that's when people do end up clogging up hospital, and we end up with a situation like we had last Christmas, where a lot of people ended up in that position, and we ended up having to go into a national lockdown.
Yes, fantastic stuff. Will, I thank you for braving the elements for us. It looks pretty chilly in Nottingham, I must say.
Yeah, it's very cold today. I'll say earlier, it was a hell of a lot colder. It's when you're standing in one place that is a problem. When you're moving around, when you're getting to do vox pops like yourself and moving between talking to people, it's a little bit easier. But when you're stood in one spot, it does get very cold.
I can imagine, yeah, it'd be ironic if you actually caught a cold while you're telling us all about flu jabs and COVID jabs and everything like that. We'd have to do something about that, wouldn't we? East Midlands reporter there, the wonderful Will Hollis, who joined us from Nottingham, just discussing your jabs. How do you feel about this, ladies and gents? GBviews at gbnews.uk. Is this a never-ending cycle of vaccination now that we're trapped in? You know, the ability of it to stop you actually getting the coronavirus does appear to fade pretty quickly.
I don't see how else it's going to end, really. So.
No.
Maybe we are just supposed to, or vulnerable people at least, will just face an endless future of being double jabbed or being vaccinated, like they do with flu, or even more frequently, who knows? Yes,
well, potentially. I tell you what, that's a bleak existence, isn't it? But there we go. Loads of people have been getting in touch with us, fading vaccination. People saying it's time people can get their jabs locally in their GP surgeries and pharmacies, anywhere local. You can just drop in, not having to travel miles for it. I think basically what Adrian's saying there is that it's not that much of an inconvenience if you still have to go and get a jab every 3 or 4 months or whatever. So fair enough if that's your view. Also, some people raising questions about whether or not it's in the interests of some vaccine companies to say that their ability to stop you getting COVID wanes really quite quickly, so that you have to keep getting them.
That is another consideration, actually. Good point. Keep your views coming in, gbviews at gbnews.uk, and we'll go to a few more of them very shortly. But for now, COVID is causing a confidence crisis in young people. That's according to the Prince's Trust. Whilst young people might feel like they've been an afterthought during the pandemic, Community Action Nottingham is providing an outlet for young volunteers to help struggling communities in the East Midlands.
Well, to date, Community Action Nottingham has removed waste from fly tipping sites and runs multiple local projects through community centres, including feeding the homeless.
Yes, well, Sam Harris is an activist and co-founder of Community Action Nottingham, whose volunteering projects have received praise from local MPs and councillors, and he joins us now. Thanks for joining us this morning. Just tell us a bit about Community Action Nottingham and why you set it up.
Community Action Nottingham was set up as a response to the pandemic. We saw a lot of elderly people facing charges from landlords because they couldn't access their gardens, and we saw food bank needs go up and issues with getting food to people in need. And obviously the pandemic put a lot of stress on young people and those that are on the poverty line. So we set up to be a support network for local charities and food banks and various other institutions to ensure that they could increase their output and kind of keep up with demand, while also showing young people that we can give back to the community. And, you know, especially in a city like Nottingham, which is dominated by students, that students do care, and that we are there for local people.
Yeah, and apparently the Prince's Trust has said that, you know, young people are having a crisis of confidence. Is that right? Do you agree with that?
I'd say, you know, the current state of affairs in the country are pretty bleak for young people. You know, you've got 0-hour contracts, you've got rents increasing left, right and centre. And obviously we've just been through, you know, a once in a lifetime kind of pandemic, we'd hope. So a lot of young people are kind of feeling left out and completely abandoned all hope of, you know, a future. So I think that there's a lot of, you know, loss of faith within communities, especially amongst young people. So, you know, we endeavour to show young people that there is a way to, you know, put back into the community and show and kind of empower yourself to drive forward, despite how bleak things get sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, allow me to just play devil's advocate here. I see this a lot. We're doing stories in our bulletins about, you know, young people struggling to get on a property ladder, this, that, and the other. You know, is there a massive, if there is a massive crisis of confidence, and if there is this idea now that this country is very bleak for young people, you know, isn't it up to young people to get off their backsides and start trying to make something of their lives? And, you know, instead of going and spending 30 quid on a rooftop cocktail somewhere in London, not saying that you did this, maybe siphon some money off for your deposit and stuff like that, you know? Is it a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy, this misery of the young?
I mean, you are very well playing devil's advocate, and I do hear this a lot amongst kind of older people. I think what young people are facing is a crisis of mental health, where there are not enough services and not enough provisions to support young people. There is an issue with employment at the moment, where young people are on what I would call poverty wages, living below the living wage. Even with the increase in yearly increase in minimum wages, I think there is a massive issue where young people, you know, even going to university nowadays, I have a degree in politics and international relations. It doesn't guarantee me any sort of job in that field. And a lot of young people are feeling completely abandoned by the government. You know, we've got youth centres been slashed, you know, youth provisions have been slashed, and we're seeing our local areas, you know, crime on the increase, especially in inner city areas. So I think young people have the right to feel completely let down by the government, especially when you look at the renting market and such like that. But I think there is hope, but I think it's through supporting others. So a lot of people that came through community action, students, you know, I was able to help them with various housing situations, as well as them, you know, joining the food banks and helping out with local communities. So, you know, it's an endeavour to support each other. And I think young people need confidence and need something to strive for. But unfortunately, at the moment, you know, there's not a lot of hope out there.
Fair enough. And look, Sam, you're doing great work, and thank you for at least allowing me to play devil's advocate for you and dealing with that rather well. Sam Harris there is an activist and a co-founder of Community Action Nottingham, which is a volunteering project, basically. They're receiving praise from local MPs and councillors, and maybe we need a little bit more Sam in our lives.
Yes, I think you did make a fair point there. Yes. I think some young people, at least, do just sit around kind of moaning. And when I would say we probably haven't ever had it, maybe not ever, but we have it better than most generations before us, let's put it that way.
I think the world is what you make it, isn't it? To an extent. I understand it's not the same for everyone, but, you know, the world is what you make it to a point. And, you know, if you sit there and you decide to see the negatives and everything, then, you know, negatives come to you, don't they? But anyway, GBviews at gbnews.uk. Now, I've been desperate to do this story since the start. And it looks like I'm going to have to wait a little bit longer because apparently the guest isn't there yet. But we'll go through our inbox. No, I want to do it properly. I've teased the nation now, trust me. You're not going to want to miss this one. It is great. Let's go into the inbox, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Yes, a lot of people getting in touch about the vaccine, saying that they always thought that it would never be particularly effective. And if you are just joining us, it's the news that apparently after 2 jabs, your second jab, just 90 days later, the efficacy of it wanes.
Yeah, that's according to a new study that's just been published, and I believe that's for Pfizer. Is that for Pfizer?
BioNTech, yes, absolutely.
So, prospect of lots of booster jabs, basically, for the future, but we'll see what happens with that.
Tony's raising some points about what was going on in the channel. Devastating scenes yesterday. 27, at least, as far as we're aware, anyway, died, including some women and potentially numerous children, depending on what reports you read at the moment. Tony's got in touch and said that maybe if the government stopped free hotels, free mobiles, healthcare, he goes on a bit here, maybe that they wouldn't be so eager to get here. And look, we are talking about different solutions to this particular crisis, aren't we? Whether it's tackling the people smuggling gangs, whether it's trying to get hold of the boat manufacturers.
Yeah.
You know,
but then the problem with that argument is, OK, so you let's say tomorrow none of that is available. We pass a law or whatever would need to happen to say, if you come here, you're not going to get those things. You're not going to get access to healthcare. We're not going to put you up in a hotel. That's not going to stop the crisis. People will still try and come here. As we've been talking about, people are so desperate to get here that even, several hours after dozens of people have died in the channel, including children, they're still willing to get on a boat and come here. So when they get here, what do? Do we just let them loose on the alternative is to let them loose on the street.
Yeah.
That is literally the only alternative. So I feel like we have to have a system in place of properly processing these people, properly looking after their well-being, because the alternative is much worse.
Yeah, I get that, absolutely. I mean, I think as well, I just find it incredibly hard to believe, right, that just over there in Calais, the French haven't got quite as good grasp of, because if about 50 people, between something like 25 and 50 people, whatever, can get on each of these boats, apparently. Well, you have to bust these people in, don't you? And then they'll be waiting somewhere, they'll be hanging around somewhere, and then you have to get them a boat. And then they've got to get that boat onto the beach, and then they've got to get off. And no one on the face of this earth can convince me that the French are doing absolutely everything within their powers.
Yeah, but you have to remember how long the area that is covered in terms of the coastline. You can't police every inch of coastline, and obviously they know that they can't. And to be fair to France, around they have managed to stop around 20-something thousand migrants from actually crossing. So they are doing a lot. They'll never stop every single migrant. I don't think there's a solution that will ever stop every single migrant who wants to cross the channel from doing so. OK, well, we're going to move away from this now, and we are going to do the story that I teased earlier, and it comes with pictures. 2 large black pigs have been wreaking havoc on a golf course in West Yorkshire. The size of those things. Oh, they're cute.
The hogs broke into... we make them sound like cat burglars. The hogs broke into Lightcliff Golf Club in Calderdale, charging the greens and knocking over bags. Witnesses have said the pigs descended on the course on Sunday, injuring a golfer, right, and then returned on the Tuesday. The pigs returned, and they injured another golfer.
I shouldn't laugh, but it is slightly comical.
What's going on with these pigs?
I don't know.
It's rattled their cage.
No. I think they look really cute. Can we put the pictures back up?
Let's have a look at these overly aggressive golf pigs. Let's have a look.
I mean, they've
had to shut the course down.
I have a dilemma. Yeah, they've opened it back up, but they had to shut it for a while. They're really cute, aren't they? And I have a really huge dilemma here because I love pork a lot. I don't know if I've mentioned before, but I love pork, but those pigs look so cute.
And we've only gone and done it, ladies and gentlemen. We've only gone and pulled it out of the bag. We've got Philip Marshall, the president of the golf club. Here he is. Hey, get in. Are the pigs still on scene?
No, they've gone now. I've got some breaking news. First to this, the guy who got injured on Tuesday has just had a hole-in-one this morning.
Hey, fantastic. That's good. What time's the hog roast at the weekend then, mate?
Yeah, well, we had hot pork sandwiches on yesterday, but I think they were from another source. But yeah, it's quite unusual, isn't it?
Yeah, all right.
Where did they come from? I mean, how does this happen?
You don't know. They first appeared on the course on Sunday, and an ex-president tried to shoo them off, and he got injured. And then they came back on Tuesday when the director in charge of Greens tried to do the same, and he got injured as well. But we've made inquiries, and we just don't know where they've come from. We contacted the RSPCA, but just no idea. No idea.
Just sorry, because I've obviously lost it a bit here now. But in terms of the injuries, they're all right, are they? How did what did they get?
They were only minor, but in those sort of cases, you've got to obviously go for a tetanus jab, and the members went too.
God.
Yeah, well, so you say you haven't roasted the pigs. So where are the pigs now? Have you taken them in as pets?
We don't actually know. They actually escaped onto a road here, pictures of them trying to butt a car, and they were put in a transporter and taken away. We don't know where they've gone. We had no information back.
Okay, and is the golf course all right? Have they ruined your greens?
They did cause some particular damage to the ninth green, but overall not too much damage, no. I mean, the very strange thing about it is that they seem to be attracted by the colour blue.
Interesting.
You've got something blue, which is quite odd.
Wow.
Obviously, true blues.
Gosh. No, I mean, that's incredible. That is incredible. Okay, so, well, I mean, gosh, good luck to you. I mean, well, I think maybe now just explain to us, really, if you had to kind of up the security. Have you got CCTV footage of these pigs? Because if you have, I'd love to play out tomorrow.
No, they come in the CCTV range. I mean, no, like most golf courses, we've got 2 or 3 public footpaths that go across it, so it's very open to the public. I mean, we've never had anything like this before. It's an absolute. We do get deer coming on. Although we are generally in quite a built-up area, but one side of it's very open. But we've never had anything like this before. It's completely unusual.
Okay, all right, and just very quickly, it's a nice opportunity for you to just sell your golf club to the nation. What's so great about it?
Lightcliff Golf Club, it's a beautiful 9-hole golf course. It's situated right in quite a built-up area, but it's got lovely views. I could show you now. The sun's shining, very, very friendly. Come and play, please. We welcome you.
Good stuff. All right, well, thank you very, very much. I mean, that was absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
I loved that.
Keep the good work. I was watching you this morning. Please like your channel.
Oh, nice. Thank you very much. We've got a good fan there. That's good. Thank you so much for that. Really good stuff.
Are you a golfer? I can see you.
I've swung a club in anger a few times.
Not on a golf course?
Oh, what? No. Oh, yeah, no. Yeah, I play golf. Yeah, I know. I don't. I did used to a bit, but I just lose all the balls. I'd be in the woods. I'd be in the sand. I'd be in the water. You know, I've always taken the view, and they won't thank me for this at the golf course, that golf ruins a good walk. But no, I do. I think I don't. It's not for me, but it's only because I'm rubbish at it. Okay, I get that golf is a great sport, but I just can't play it to save my life.
Yeah, well, GB views at GBnews.uk. We can go to a couple of your views before we end the show.
Can we? Right. Okay. Good stuff. Right. Well, how do we segue from pigs into anything else? Frankly, let's go on about young people. We had a chap on before who was saying that basically, you know, there's young people have lost hope in Britain, and quite a few of you have said, hey, look, come on, these young people need to stop being so entitled. It's everyone else's fault. I think it's important to say, though, that they are obviously doing very, very good charity work, a lot of these people, and helping youngsters out.
Yes, indeed. Well, that is it from us here at To The Point. But don't go away. Up next is The Briefing with Gloria De Piero. But first, the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Good morning. Fine and sunny, if somewhat cold today, but from tomorrow onwards the weather's going to get very lively, starting with some very strong winds on Friday across northern Britain, and all parts of the UK likely to be very blustery on Saturday. That's going to come from this area of low pressure that is developing at the moment between Iceland and Greenland. Back to the UK, though, for today. We've had this cold front crossing the UK, introducing clearer skies. So plenty of sunshine around through the morning, but it is pretty cold out there, accentuated by the wind, which is blowing in a few showers across eastern England, rain showers here, and maybe Pembrokeshire and Cornwall too. Snow showers, though, over northern Scotland. mostly over the hills. At low levels, a mixture of rain and hail. The wind's steadily easing through the day, but nevertheless, it's going to feel cold out there. 5, 6, 7, maybe 8 degrees, but add on that wind, and it really does feel pretty cold this morning. It'll turn cold quickly this evening as well, with the frost forming fairly sharply. But look at this. Here comes that low pressure system we saw earlier. A bit of snow on the hills, but mostly rain overnight across northern Britain. And then the winds start to strengthen yet again as this rain pushes southwards across England and Wales during Friday. And then the colder air really hits northern Scotland, so the rain showers turning back to snow, down to relatively low levels through Friday, and the winds start to strengthen later in the day. Showers across much of the country then during Friday. As I said, at this stage, certainly across the south, they will be of rain, but snow showers in northern Scotland. Temperatures back up a touch, but feeling colder. This low pressure system then heading through the North Sea, bringing those very strong winds on Friday across the north, but more widely across the country on Saturday. So we have Met Office yellow warnings in place. Gusts of 50, 60 miles an hour, maybe 70, possibly around some exposed coast, 80 miles an hour. Could cause some disruption. So keep up to date with the forecast. The warnings are on the Met Office website.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Hello and welcome to The Briefing with me, Gloria De Piero. Lots coming up today. After yesterday's tragedy in the Channel, we're asking how we stop this happening again. Then later in the programme we'll be talking body image with an MP worried what perfect pictures on social media are doing to our mental health. And we'll be meeting a father whose daughter died from carbon monoxide poisoning, who's fighting now to protect others. First, it's the news with Rosie.
Good afternoon, I'm Rosie Wright. This is your news at 12 o'clock. A border force boat with 10 migrants on board and a lifeboat carrying up to 50 migrants arrived in Dover this morning. Well, it comes after a boat capsized yesterday and at least 27 people died trying to make the crossing. The Prime Minister is calling for joint police patrols in the Channel with France to try to stop the migrant crossings. French President Emmanuel Macron said that stronger European cooperation was needed between European countries to tackle human traffickers. Former head of the UK Border Force, Tony Smith, told GB News the people smugglers are currently winning the battle, not the government.
I think two civilised countries like the UK and France, both signatories, founder members, if you like, of the 51 Convention, should first and foremost agree a strategy that's going to stop to save lives and to put the smugglers out of business. At the moment, they're winning this because the business model is such that, well, all you've got to do is give me €5,000, get in this little boat, and they don't care about human life. I've dealt with them myself. They don't care about human life. They're just interested in the money.
Energy supply Bulb is to be given nearly £1.7 billion in government support after the company collapsed earlier this week. The public financing will ensure its 1.6 million customers continue to receive energy. The company was put into special administration on Wednesday, meaning it can continue to operate until a potential buyer can be found or until its customers leave. A 34-year-old man has appeared in court today in connection with the death of a couple in Somerset. Colin Reeves has been charged with the murders of Jennifer and Stephen Chappell. The couple were killed at home as their children slept upstairs on Sunday. A second man, aged 67, was arrested on suspicion of 2 murders and was released under investigation on Tuesday. More than 5,500 alerts of sewage being discharged into coastal waters were issued by water companies last year, a report has found. The campaign group Surfers Against Sewage found that 1 in 6 days out of the official bathing season were unswimmable last year because of pollution near beaches. It marks an 87% increase on last year's figure. The government is expected to give the green light on proposals for English football's independent regulator. It was the key recommendation of the fan-led review that was commissioned in April after the European Super League row. 6 English Premier League clubs formed part of the breakaway before pulling out of the plans after significant backlash. The Sports Minister, Nigel Huddleston, has promised to move as quickly as possible to bring forward any legislation needed. First-time buyers face, on average, having to pay 5.5 times their typical annual salary to get onto the property ladder. A nationwide study has found that breaks the previous record set in 2007, and it's significantly higher than the historical average of a house being 3.8 times your annual salary. Figures confirm that London continues to have the highest price-to-earnings ratio. Adverts for cosmetic procedures to change a person's physical appearance, they're going to be banned for under 18s from May of next year. Companies will no longer be able to advertise procedures like breast augmentation and nose reshaping during television programmes that are likely to appeal to under 18s. The Committee of Advertising Practice says young people are vulnerable to body image pressures and that negative perceptions could have an impact on their mental health. And a Roman mosaic has been found in a farmer's field in Rutland. The artwork depicts the famous Battle of the Trojan War and dates back to the 3rd or 4th century AD. It's one of only a handful of mosaics across Europe, and because it's so rare, it's now going to receive special protection. You are up to date. I'll be back with the headlines in half an hour. But now back to the briefing with Gloria.
Coming up this hour on The Briefing, we've the latest on the migrant crisis, and we're asking what can be done to stop people dying in the Channel again? And what are perfect pictures on social media doing to our mental health? We're talking with the MP who wants digitally altered images clearly labelled as such. Carbon monoxide is known as the silent killer. It takes lives every year. We're talking to a bereaved father whose daughter was poisoned by the gas, who's fighting to raise awareness. And give me your political briefing. Send in your views and opinions by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. Well, yesterday we had the tragedy that has long been predicted. At least 27 people lost their lives trying to cross the English Channel. Politicians here and in France are now urgently talking about how we can prevent further deaths. Our Home Affairs editor, Mark White, joins us now. Mark, bring us up to date.
Well, Gloria, you would think that perhaps we might see a pause in migrant activity following that terrible tragedy in the middle of the English Channel yesterday, but not a bit of it. First thing this morning, Border Force and the lifeboats from Dover were out intercepting more small boats. Those people brought here to Dover Harbour. Now 50 to 60, I think, so far today. There may be other incidents as the day progresses. What we do know is there are many more in the way of French border police, border agency officials on the beaches of northwest France today. The question I think that the British government wants answered is, if you can do it today, why have you not been doing it in the weeks and months beforehand? I think it's difficult to see how much, even though we are hearing that Boris Johnson and the French President Emmanuel Macron had a phone conversation. It was described as very constructive, and again Priti Patel has been speaking to her French counterpart. I'm not sure much in the way of constructive results is going to come from this, because you heard from Boris Johnson when he gave that interview with members of the press after the Cobra meeting last night. He was pointing the finger right away at the French, saying he didn't believe that they were doing enough to stop the boats leaving their beaches in the first place. And I think he was in particular very critical of the French decision to reject offers from the British to put personnel and equipment onto French beaches to help in that effort, if you like, to saturate those French beaches with security personnel to ensure that the boats can't leave in the first place. The French have said no, they are not willing to accept the British doing that on their soil. They will do it themselves. They've had, of course, £54 million from the UK. It's being paid in instalments. The first instalment has already been given to the French. But this whole crisis really relies on French cooperation. The British government believe it hasn't been as cooperative as it should have been in recent months. Let's see if that changes in the days and weeks ahead.
Blame game is alive and well. France have responded by blaming the UK for its lax approach to migration, and said that new arrivals were frequently able to work illegally in Britain.
Yes, absolutely, and I mean there's a lucrative trade in the people smuggling business as well. We heard that some 18 people smugglers were arrested in France yesterday in a joint effort by the National Crime Agency here in the UK and their French counterparts. But as they're taken off the streets, they'll soon be replaced by others who want to join what is a well-established and, as I say, very lucrative criminal enterprise that makes millions of euros every week at 5,000 a head at least for those going on these boats that can hold up to 50 or 60 people a time, making that channel crossing. You can see how quickly that money mounts up, and they become much more sophisticated in both the vessels they use and the conditions that they will often push off from. However, having said that, there are other groups of criminal gangs who seem to be much more willing to push migrants off in less than ideal conditions and to use inflatable boats that are not at all robust. Now, the boat that we think was involved in yesterday's incident just before the British territorial waters was a Chinese-made inflatable, about 9 metres long, a grey boat that they are known to be very flimsy indeed. They are often tied up here in the harbour at Dover after they've been dragged in from a migrant interception, and in the heat of the sun they will often pop. And of course, carrying, we understand, about 30 people in the channel yesterday, it seems that the boat itself, the seams of that boat just gave way and it started deflating in the middle of the channel, and those people, of course, tossed into the water in freezing conditions.
Argue that it is the government that is to blame for not providing safe routes for asylum seekers to travel to Britain.
I missed the start of your question.
I was making the point that it is argued by many charities who work with asylum seekers that it is the failure of the government to provide safe routes which leads to tragedies which happened yesterday.
Yeah, I think on that, what the government say is that they do provide safe routes, but they provide safe routes out of war zones, countries where there are very significant problems, where anyone from that country would be able to claim refugee status and be granted that. So we're talking about Afghanistan. They point to the fact that they have safe routes in operation there. They're taking and are taking 15,000 asylum seekers, refugees from Afghanistan, that they did the same in Syria, that they have had a young person's route, allowing children from that war-torn region to have preferential treatment and to come to the UK. And they are operating similar schemes in some other countries as well. But they also say that, you know, in terms of the number of migrants or the asylum seekers that they will accept, is, you know, dependent on the conditions that they're faced with, and of course they don't want to be saturated with asylum seekers here as well. The latest figures, interestingly, have come out today on asylum applications, and it shows actually that it is at an almost 20-year high. 37,500 asylum applications in the year to September. Now, that doesn't include the several thousand who will have come in the months since September. So we're probably well over 45,000 asylum applications, because 99% of those intercepted on the small boats go on to claim asylum. And because of the number of asylum seekers that are coming here, there's a backlog. So we're talking about 67,500 people still waiting to have those asylum claims processed. So it's pretty, it's a system that needs to be reformed. The government is saying it is reforming it. It's accusing Labour of slowing down their asylum and immigration bill in Parliament at the moment. So, yeah, as you say, Gloria, blame being spread and passed all around from France to the UK, within the UK political system, among the political parties as well.
Mark White, thank you so much for bringing us up to date. Thank you, Mark. Well, joining me now is Beth Gardner-Smith, the Chief Executive of Safe Passage. That's a charity that helps refugees to find safe routes to asylum. Beth, welcome. I mean, Mark White was saying that there are safe routes for asylum seekers to take. I mean, there's a press release here I printed off about the Afghanistan Safe Passage from the Foreign Office.
Yes, there are very few, is the reality. And in fact, you mentioned the Afghanistan evacuation. Now, the evacuation was, I think everybody agrees, a huge success. But what's followed since then is nothing concrete from the government in terms of a safe route. So they promised to resettle refugees from Afghanistan under a new scheme. That scheme isn't even up and running yet. And actually, yesterday, we heard that one of the refugees that had made it across to the UK in one of these small boats was, in fact, from Afghanistan themselves, had served in the Afghan army alongside British armed forces and was fearing for their life and was sick of waiting, could not wait anymore, was worried that every day that went on, you know, they may face persecution or may be found, and therefore had to make a dangerous journey, in their view, to come to the UK to seek protection.
In your view, could yesterday's tragedy have been avoided?
Absolutely, it could have done. And I think what's really disappointing from the Prime Minister, from the Home Secretary today, and across the Channel as well, is we're just hearing more of the same. I think everybody agrees that the approach that they've taken has categorically failed, you know, and yet all they have provided today is more of the same solutions, more money to the French, you know, more border policing, that they say is going to solve the problem. Well, if that was going to solve the problem, it would have done many years ago, but it hasn't. And in fact, what it's led to is that tragedy, this terrible tragedy.
Do you get that people want our borders to be secure?
I totally understand that, you know, people feel anxiety around this. I really do. But I think also I believe that people feel a common humanity, and that when you see pictures of people coming across in these small boats, most of us cannot even imagine the desperation that would force somebody to take that decision. And so I think we all recognise that these are people who are incredibly desperate, are going to extraordinary lengths to reach protection, often to reach family here in the UK. And what has happened, particularly in the past couple of years, is actually the government has closed down any safe options for those people to come to the UK, particularly those who have family connections, family links here, to come safely to the UK. And that is part of what's driving this.
The number of people to have claimed asylum in the UK after crossing the Channel in boats has reached 25,700 for this year so far, more than 3 times the 8,469 total for all of 2020. Can they really all be genuine?
Well, in fact, what we found from the stats is that the vast majority, 98% in fact, go on to claim asylum here in Britain, and 2/3 of them are then accepted. And so not everybody, but will go on to gain asylum in this country, but the vast majority do. And actually, we're talking about people who are coming from Afghanistan, who are coming from Iran and Iraq, who are coming from Sudan. These are countries where we know many people are fleeing for their lives. And many of those people also have a strong and genuine connection with the UK because of family and because of links such as, serving with the British Armed Forces in Afghanistan.
One thing I don't understand is, because I'm sure a lot of people would share the humanity about the people making those trips. And I'm sure all people would equally be very, very angry with the people who are enabling them to make this very, very dangerous journey, the people traffickers. I mean, most people would think we should just find those people, lock them up, and throw away the key, quite frankly.
Absolutely. The criminal gangs that are exploiting people's desperate circumstances, have a lot to answer for here. It's wicked what they are doing, but they are exploiting a situation that has been caused by government failure, and we have to accept that. Governments have been talking for years about cracking down on criminal gangs, but they haven't managed to do it. And instead, what they end up doing usually is prosecuting the people that steer the boat, who are often in vulnerable situations themselves, and are no less vulnerable than the other people that are on the boat that are making the crossing. So yes, absolutely, the criminal gangs have a lot to answer for here, but I think governments can't shirk responsibility on this. And for Boris Johnson to say, it's all the fault of the criminal gangs, is not genuine, because actually they're exploiting the fact that there is no safe option for people who have genuine connections and family in the UK to come here safely.
France has blamed the UK and suggested, and the government talk about pull factors, why people might be particularly attracted to coming to the UK. And the French say that new arrivals are frequently able to work illegally in Britain. Are we just the most attractive country for those people who seek asylum? And is that a problem? Because the whole world needs to do their bit.
We hear this a lot. In fact, Britain takes, a minority of those who are coming to Europe to seek asylum. In fact, in France, they have 4 times the number of asylum applications that the UK does. So actually, most people do choose to go elsewhere, to stop elsewhere. But those who are coming to the UK, we find in our work, particularly with unaccompanied children and families, they're doing so because they have that genuine connection and need to come to the UK. They've lost everything, and they might have a family member, they might, who is here. And, they, therefore, of course, they want to reach the UK to join them, to be safe and to rebuild their lives. And any one of us would want to do the same if we had lost everything.
Beth Gardner-Smith, the Chief Executive of Safe Passage, thank you for coming in today. Appreciate your time. Nice to see you. Now, we are bombarded by perfect pictures on social media. But what's that doing to our mental health? Next, we're talking to an MP who wants altered images clearly labelled. But first, it's time for the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello. This morning, the Met Office have named Storm Arwen. It's arriving through Friday and lingering into the weekends. Warnings have been issued, including amber warnings across parts of the northeast of England and eastern Scotland. The storm system has really yet to form, but it is drifting southwards over the next 24 hours. And the worst effects will be on Friday afternoon as the isobars squeeze together. Very strong winds across northern Scotland initially, but strong winds developing almost everywhere by the end of Friday. Back to this afternoon, and well, for many it's a fine day out there, dry and sunny. There's a cold wind blowing, bringing a few showers across eastern England and a few for Pembrokeshire and Cornwall, and some wintry showers in northern Scotland. But otherwise, largely dry and bright, but it is cold. Temperatures 5 to 8 degrees. Add on that wind and it feels even colder. It's through this evening we'll start to see the effects of the storm system arriving. Initially a band of rain pushing in with some snow over the hills across Scotland for a time. That zone of wet weather will then sink southwards during the night and become more extensive on Friday. Ahead of it, with clear skies, there will be a frost across the southeast, but quickly it'll cloud over on Friday morning, making for a grey, cold, fairly damp day with outbreaks of rain for most places, but the rain turning increasingly to snow over the hills of Scotland. And then the winds really start to pick up on Friday afternoon across the far north with frequent sleet and snow showers, and the gusty winds strengthening further. Temperatures a touch higher tomorrow, but it's still going to feel cold, especially as that wind picks up late in the day. Potential for damaging gusts of wind across the north and east of Scotland, especially on Friday afternoon and evening. And then through the evening, the winds strengthen further over northeast England, but also across north and west Wales, Northern Ireland and the west coast of Scotland. So Storm Arwen on the way, widespread gusts, disruption is possible. Keep up to date with the forecast. The warnings are on the Met Office website.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hi, I'm Alistair Stewart, and I really hope that you can join me here on GB News. I've been in this game for 40 years and I've made lots of friends, and I try and reflect what they think about the big stories of the day in conversation with me. That's why we call it Alistair Stewart and Friends, and you're a key part of it as well. I always get inundated with emails and messages and texts, and if they're really good, I play them back to you. 12 till 3 every Saturday and Sunday.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Now, we've probably all admired, even envied, the bodies beautiful in the pages of magazines and on social media, but the images are often touched up and create an unrealistic ideal of beauty. This week, MPs have debated calls for celebrities to be banned from posting airbrushed images without declaring that they have been tweaked. Let's speak now to the MP leading that debate, Tory MP for Bosworth, who's also a GP, Dr Luke Evans. I think it's your first time on the show. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Luke, tell us about the law that you would like to change. What law would you like to, are you proposing to introduce?
So my private member's bill is to bring forward a law that would require social media publishers and advertisers to label any digitally altered images of body parts. So, for example, if you made your biceps bigger or your waist slimmer, you're entitled to do so, but it should carry a small label. Now, we have a precedent already for it by the product plea when you're watching TV, if something's paid for as an advertisement. And I think given the pressures that are on particularly young people when it comes to the likes of social media, this is a way of making people aware that there's an issue here. Yesterday, I was able to have a Westminster Hall debate to raise this very issue about body image in law with the Minister. And it was great to be able to have that response and that dialogue to say how we can drive this forward.
It's not just the celebrities or the publications, is it? The Girl Guiding charity research suggests that around half of young women aged between 11 and 21 regularly use apps or filters to make photos of themselves look better online. So basically, we're all doing it.
Well, this is the real big worry about it. And the Women Inequalities Select Committee looked into this and found that 6 in 10 women felt shame and concern about their body image. And 1 in 5 adults and 1 in 3 children feel shame about the way they look. What I'm most concerned about, though, is if we create a narrative or a place in the digital world where you can't ever achieve what you're seeing. And if we're constantly bombarded by images that are altered in a way that is unachievable in real life, you create this downward spiral of self-loathing. And at the worst case, that means we've already got 1.25 million people suffering with anorexia and bulimia. And actually, particularly men, we've got 1 million people using steroids to try and bulk up to fit what the media narrative might well be. And that's why it's such a big concern.
Have to display the sort of logo of warning. How would it work?
So there's 2 parts that I'm campaigning for. The first one is to hashtag recognise body image in UK law. And there's a petition up and running that anyone can sign. And that's asking the government to prioritise that as a harm in the online safety bill that's coming forward. So that would mean that they'd concentrate specifically on the harm caused by body image. My personal law would require that where those images are doctored, you'd have to have a little label, like a letter like a B or a P or something like that, to be able to demonstrate that you can still go ahead and change your image, but it carries a warning with it. Now, often people say, well, how would that work? Are you going to try and police someone who wants to, touch up their wedding photos? Well, actually, the companies can already work out who's using it for commercial meaning and organic side of things. And that's really, really important. So the tools are already out there for the social media companies to do this. It's about making sure there is the emphasis for them to then do it.
And in one of the speeches that you made in Parliament, you mentioned reality TV celebrities who have spoken out about their struggles with body image. Do you think this culture that we've created is part of that? Tell us about the celebrities that you mentioned in your speech and why.
Well, absolutely. So if we go back to particularly the male side, Spencer Matthews openly spoke about the fact that he needed to bulk up and use steroids to try and fill a narrative because he was on camera. And this is the problem. If we've got our celebrities who people look up to all feeling the pressure to look perfect, they in turn will then use these tools to create what they think is the perfect image, which means that people who look up to them will then have that to follow suit. So we're in this vicious cycle. I often use the analogy, it's a bit like trying to rent a room. I have no problems with people changing the lighting or repainting the walls or something like that. But fundamentally, when you're advertising that room on TV, you can't digitally alter the size of the kitchen or the size of the garden. Fundamentally, that doesn't exist. And that's what we need to try and prevent.
And I'm too old to sort of really understand this, but social media influencers, if I was young, then they would be a much bigger part of my life. But how do you define one, and how big a part are they in creating the problem that we're discussing?
Well, it's a really, really good question. Actually, the CMA, the Competition and Markets Authority, are looking at this because it's very easy for me to say, well, I've got 100 followers. You're probably not a social media influencer. But what if I've got 1 million followers? Well, they probably are. But somewhere in the middle, about 100,000. What does that mean? I've already talked about the commercial aspect, that there are tools out there that companies hold them to a higher account by using the algorithms to see who's promoting various things. But this is exactly the debate that we need to have. And the Advertising Standards Authority are looking into this. They've done a call for evidence around body image to try and actually tease out how we define social influencers, how we define the media and regards of body image, so that we know who is promoting in a positive way, but also where the money's coming from and also who's promoting in a negative way, and we can hold them to account. So the ASA have a role to play in this, but also with new legislation brought forward by the government, Ofcom will have a big role in dealing with this, and the powers and the teeth to put in big fines and ask for, most fundamentally, the information behind the algorithms that are driving these images towards people.
And finally, what are your chances of getting a change in the law?
That's a really good question, and that's why I'm glad shows like yours are raising the profile of it, because the problem is the legislative agenda is so full and packed with a lot going on at the moment. This isn't going away. I think there will be a piece of legislation, be it mine or someone else's, that will be the chink in the dam that will let this move forward. Other countries are already looking forward to trying to do something like this, and Israel and France have already brought some form of legislation in, but most close to mine is actually Norway are bringing forward a legislation around labelling images. So the world is waking up to it. I think it's just trying to get that right. And I hope the online harms bill will be a chance for me to get at least part of it to hashtag recognise body image.
Dr. Luke Evans, it's been a pleasure chatting to you about this. Good luck. Coming up, carbon monoxide. We speak to the MP, warning that rising fuel costs this winter could lead to more deaths from the so-called silent killer. Plus, the Home Secretary is to update MPs on the migrant crisis. We'll bring you that statement live as it happens. But first, it's the news with Rosie.
Good afternoon, I'm Rosie Wright. Here are the latest headlines. A Border Force boat with 10 migrants on board and a lifeboat carrying up to 50 migrants arrived in Dover this morning. It comes after a boat capsized yesterday and 27 people died trying to make the crossing. It's the worst incident of its kind in the Channel since the current migrant crisis began. The Prime Minister is calling for joint police patrols in the Channel with France to try to stop migrant crossings. The government's going to give energy supplier Bulb nearly £1.7 billion after the company collapsed earlier this week. The public financing will ensure its 1.6 million customers continue to receive energy. The company was put into special administration on Wednesday, meaning it can continue to operate until a potential buyer can be found or until its customers leave. A 34-year-old man will appear in court today in connection with the death of a couple in Somerset. Colin Reeves has been charged with the murders of Jennifer and Stephen Chappell. The couple were killed at home as their children slept upstairs on Sunday. First-time buyers face having to pay, on average, 5.5 times their typical annual salary to get on the property ladder. A nationwide study has found it breaks the previous record in 2007 and is significantly higher than the historical average of a house being 3.8 times your annual salary. Figures confirm that London continues to have the highest house price to earnings ratio. And a Roman mosaic has been found in a farmer's field in Rutland. The artwork depicts the famous Battle of the Trojan War and dates back to the 3rd or 4th century AD. It's one of only a handful across Europe, and due to its rarity, it will now receive special protection. You're right up to date here on GB News. I'll be back with more at 1 o'clock.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back. Now, it's odourless, tasteless and invisible, but carbon monoxide can also be a killer. This week is Carbon Monoxide Awareness Week, and campaigners are warning that this winter, with rising fuel costs, more people may suffer from carbon monoxide poisoning because they can't afford to service their boilers or buy an alarm. We're joined by the Labour MP for Barnsley East, who also she's an officer on the All-Party Parliamentary Carbon Monoxide Group, and Gordon Samuel, who lost his daughter to carbon monoxide poisoning. Gordon, I'm going to start with you, if I may. You lost your daughter, Katie. Tell us what happened that February night 11 years ago.
Yes, it was the 18th of February in 2010, and we were on our way, unusually on a Thursday night, from our home in London to a home that we have in the Cotswolds. And we were on the M4, and the phone rang, and it was Katie's mother-in-law, who said, "Where are you?" I said, "We're on the M4." And she said, "Can you go to the next junction and turn round?" Katie's had an accident. She's been poisoned by carbon monoxide, and she's at the Royal Berkshire Hospital. So it was a very, very cold night, and I turned round, and Avril, my wife, didn't speak to me on the way back. She knew that something really serious was wrong. I didn't for a moment believe that there was anything fatally wrong with her. And we arrived at the hospital and parked the car and rushed into the hospital, and I asked for Katie Samuel, and they said, "Well, we don't have anybody called Katie Samuel." And I suddenly remembered she'd just got married and her name was Haynes, and that's what she was registered at. And so two young doctors came to see us and put us into a private room. And then those awful words, "I'm sorry to have to tell you." And we were taken into, I said, we both wanted to see her straight away. And she was on a gurney, and half of her left-hand side of her face was very badly bruised. And what had happened was that she'd come home from work. She was a press officer for Oxford University. And she came home, they lived in Wokingham, and she fed the cat, ran the bath, turned the TV on. Husband Richard rang and said, "I'm at the supermarket, do you want anything?" She said, "Let's not go out tonight, let's just get something, from the supermarket, get a Thai takeaway or something." He said, "Okay, I'll be back soon." And she went to have a bath, and when he got back, he rang the doorbell because he had parcels, and she didn't answer, so used his key to get in and noticed that the cat was unconscious in the hallway. And he ran into the bathroom and found her submerged. Effectively, what had happened was, I think that she had stood up and she became totally intoxicated with carbon monoxide. She had 37% in her bloodstream, and 2% could be fatal. She had 37%. And what had happened was that the boiler, which was in the kitchen, had malfunctioned and had emitted this lethal gas around the house, especially into the kitchen, because in this little cottage that they had, the bathroom was at the far end of the house.
Yep.
And he called his parents, who were just due any minute. Richard got 20% carbon monoxide trying to resuscitate her, and her Jackie and Gordon, her in-laws, got 10% each, and they were hospitalised as well. So that's what happened. And I think about, we went to our home in the country and stayed there for about 5 weeks. And after 2 days, I thought, I'm just going to try and do something to raise awareness of this lethal gas killer. It's called the silent killer because you can't smell it, taste it, see it. And we started. And we started a charitable trust which carries on to this day. And it's called the Katie Haynes Memorial Trust. And it's on our website.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I've had a look at it. It's very emotional just listening to what happened that night. It's very brave of you to decide to make sure.
We want to do this, as painful as it is, because I just don't want it to
happen to anyone.
Yeah, I just want to warn people. If we'd known, she'd still be alive.
Stephanie Peacock, let me bring you in. You're an officer in an all-party parliamentary group on carbon monoxide safety. What are you campaigning for?
Well, firstly, I want to say how my heart goes out to Gordon and his family. It's such a tragic story, and sadly, there are far too many stories across the country. I mean, this week is Carbon Monoxide Awareness Week, as you said at the beginning, and it's really important that we raise awareness of the risks of carbon monoxide because, as you said, it is the silent killer, and it's got symptoms that are very similar to flu and indeed coronavirus, and people don't always realise until it's too late. So I think it's important to know what the symptoms are, and that can be anything from a dull headache to dizziness, nausea, and so on, and also to make sure that people have alarms in their houses so that they can be alerted.
How expensive are alarms? I bet most of us don't have them, is the truth, which is part of your awareness raising.
Yeah, absolutely. They retail between about £15 and £20, so they aren't cheap. And with the rising cost of living and with bills going up, they aren't a priority. Indeed, I put out a call saying I'd got some to give to constituents, and we were absolutely overwhelmed with requests. I think we've got about 350 people in Barnsley that have got in touch with me that would like to take up the offer. So there clearly is a need there, and sadly, people don't prioritise it, but it can save your life.
Gordon, how many people lose their lives or are hospitalised from carbon monoxide poisoning?
As long as we've been involved in this, which is 11 years, the figure has been somewhere between 40 and 60 annually die of carbon monoxide. About 4,000 are hospitalised from the effects of carbon monoxide. I mean, some of it could be brain damage, heart attacks, strokes, all sorts of other illnesses that are a byproduct of carbon monoxide.
What should we do? Because just listening to you in particular, but Stephanie also, I'm thinking, my gosh, I need to check what appliances do I need to check? What's the real danger in our homes?
You need to check all appliances which are carbon burning. So a gas boiler, an oil-fired boiler, your gas fire, gas cooker, barbecues, gas heaters on boats, caravans, all that sort of thing. Anything that is carbon burning will emit this gas. And what you've got to make sure is that it's combusting properly. For example, on your cooker, if the flame is blue, it's combusting properly.
Right.
If it's yellow, it's actually emitting carbon monoxide.
Stephanie, you are a Labour MP, but this is a cross-party issue, and that's why you're part of an all-party group, which means that you campaign about this with other MPs from different parties. What are you calling on the government to do?
Well, we have members from across the House that are committed to raising awareness of this. As you say, it's not party political, it's cross-party. I indeed led a debate in Parliament earlier this year calling for a number of changes for the government to make, and I'm really pleased that they have announced some changes this week. And so they're going to make sure that landlords are required to maintain alarms. Before, it was only certain appliances, solid fuel, that a private landlord would have to install an alarm for. Now it will be all fuel burning burning appliances, it will be social landlords as well, and it will be new build houses. So I'm really pleased the government have listened and will be introducing some of these changes, because I think these simple changes will hopefully save lives. I would also like the government to sort of amend the guidance on the NHS website. I had a look this morning again, and if you read the NHS website on carbon monoxide poisoning, it says it's similar to sort of food poisoning and flu, but it doesn't flag up that it can be similar to coronavirus symptoms. And of course, if people have got symptoms, they're encouraged to stay at home, and this can be one of the most dangerous things to do if you've got carbon monoxide symptoms. And so particularly if you've got the symptoms that we mentioned earlier, headache, weakness, dizziness, and they get better when you go outside into your garden, that can be a sign. So I think it's really welcome the government have made some changes, and there's some areas where they could go further.
Is there more that can be done in your view?
Well, there was a government consultation, which is just, Stephanie was saying, has just been published. It's asking landlords now to make it mandatory to have carbon monoxide alarms in rented properties and in social housing as well. But one thing that was omitted from it are gas cookers. I simply don't understand why everything else is included but a gas cooker. Because in low-cost housing, people that can't afford to keep the gas fire on all night or have central heating, I have known of somebody, or a case, where somebody lit the gas fire to keep it going all night long, to keep him warm.
Right.
And there was a breeze and it didn't combust properly. In the morning, he was killed. So the other thing is, I mean, there's an acronym that's just been come out called, which is COMA, C-O-M-A, and the C is for cohabitees. So if you're in a house or a flat, and check that your other people in the house are suffering from the same thing or not. The O is for outside. So when you're outside, do you feel better?
Yeah.
Right? The M is for maintenance, which means that you really do have to maintain your carbon burning appliances, particularly your boiler or your cooker or your fire. And the A is for alarm, which means that if you get an audible carbon monoxide alarm, it could save your life. Katie actually had a carbon monoxide alarm. They bought a smoke alarm.
Right.
They put up the smoke alarm, but they didn't put up the carbon monoxide alarm. You just have to pull the thing on it to activate it.
Right, OK.
And they hadn't done it.
It's absolutely heartbreaking.
I mean,
it's just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But you've made me rethink my life, and I must sort that out. And I'm sure you have made.
I mean, the alarms last 7 to 10 years.
Right. So
and
once
all you
you've
need
made
to
that
do
purchase,
is test it once a week. There's a thing called Test It Tuesday.
Yeah.
You press the little button every Tuesday just to make sure that it's working.
Thank you so much, Gordon.
Thank you for asking me.
Thank you. And thank you to Stephanie Peacock in Barnsley too. Thank you. Thank you for raising Carbon Monoxide Awareness Week for us and the dangers associated with it. Time for us all to check our appliances, I think. Now, the Home Secretary, Priti Patel, is expected to update MPs on the small boats crisis in the next few minutes following the tragic drowning of 27 people in the Channel yesterday. We'll be live with that statement, but first let's speak to our political correspondent, Tom Harwood, who is in Westminster for hers. Tom, difficult day for Priti Patel?
An incredibly difficult day for Priti Patel. Really, this is the one thing that she did not want to happen upon becoming Home Secretary. Over the last 2 years, the number of migrants travelling across the Channel has risen by tenfold. And of course, the largest number of deaths in the Channel ever. Just yesterday. This is a very bad look for a Home Secretary who has always sought to be seen as being tough on immigration. It's something actually that the Labour Party started to bring up over the weekend, with the Shadow Home Secretary Nick Thomas-Symonds doing the rounds on Sunday morning, saying that the government has got to get a grip of this. Whether the Labour Party is actually believed to be tougher than the Tory Party on this issue, though, is an open question. But Priti Patel will be facing some very, very harsh scrutiny from her own side as well as from other sides of the House in just a few moments' time, when she has got to set out, got to explain what she's doing beyond the the repeated answer of this Nationality and Borders Bill, the new plan for immigration that's currently going through Parliament but won't be in effect really until next summer. There's, of course, the new task force that has been set up to look at this issue, chaired by Steve Barclay, the Cabinet Office Minister. Now, some people think that that's a bit of a power erosion. The Home Secretary, of course, sits on that task force but does not chair it herself. Now, what more can the government do to cooperate with France to try and sort out the short-term problems as well as those long-term problems? That will really be under the microscope in the House of Commons in just a few moments' time.
The taxpayer have already given the French authorities millions of pounds so they can help deal with the problem at that end. Is it money down the drain?
Well, the French would say that they have been putting on patrols, that they have been trying to stop departures from the beaches, and what's happened over the last year or so is that the departures that used to come from Calais have moved further and further north to places that are actually a much longer distance from the United Kingdom but are less frequently patrolled. And so the United Kingdom has every few months given a few more tens of millions of pounds to the French to try and expand those patrols. But ultimately, the number of people trying to seek asylum has grown and grown, and of course a proportionate percentage are getting through at a higher rate as well. Naturally, as you'd expect, the UK has criticised to some extent the French for not being as vigilant as they would like, but the French, of course, are insisting that they don't want to be seen to be encouraging this sort of behaviour as well. There are many people, particularly we've heard from the mayor of Calais in the last in recent history, saying that he doesn't want these kind of migrant camps in his town. He doesn't want the flow of people to be happening. This is just as bad for the French as it is for the Brits in their mind. However, there are some legitimate questions to ask of the French and of the European Union, of Frontex, their border force, as to why it's not stepping up to the plate in the way that you might expect. There have been many reports of the French Coast Guard sort of standing by and watching migrant boats take off and not getting involved. Now, of course, there's a lot of difficulty when it comes to international law in terms of dealing with boats in the Channel. The way that you're allowed to interact with those boats under international law is incredibly limited, and the obligations that you have as a country under international law, if you take any of those migrants off those boats onto your boats, are considerable. So the question is, to what extent will this government be able to stand up to international law, to maybe push back against international law, as of course Australia did in the last decade? These are going to be very real pressures on the Home Secretary, not least from her own side.
Artists say that it is the government to blame because they don't provide enough safe routes for those seeking asylum.
I think that the only answer here is a bit of both sides, really. It's a completely legitimate point to say that the Home Secretary has promised more safe routes, although those safe routes have not materialised with particular speed. But also, it's true to say that the gangs that are people trafficking in migrants, the criminal gangs that are people trafficking in migrants, need strong deterrence. Now, the Nationality and Borders Bill was originally marketed as a sort of two-pincered approach. Number one, you make it very, very hard to come to the United Kingdom. You close down those illegal routes, you deter those illegal routes, and you go after those criminal gangs. But also, you make sure that there's legal processing where those legitimate asylum seekers can go through non-illegal means to get to the UK. Now, it is a legitimate question that has not materialised.
Thanks so much, Tom, for bringing us up to date. We'll go to Parliament Live for that statement. You've been watching The Briefing with me, Gloria De Piero. The show is back every weekday from noon. Up next, it's On the Money with Liam Halligan. For now, it's your weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello. This morning, the Met Office have named Storm Arwen. It's arriving through Friday and lingering into the weekends. Warnings have been issued, including amber warnings across parts of the northeast of England and eastern Scotland. The storm system has really yet to form, but it is drifting southwards over the next 24 hours. And the worst effects will be on Friday afternoon as the isobars squeeze together. Very strong winds across northern Scotland initially, but strong winds developing almost everywhere by the end of Friday. Back to this afternoon, and well, for many it's a fine day out there, dry and sunny. There's a cold wind blowing, bringing a few showers across eastern England and a few for Pembrokeshire and Cornwall, and some wintry showers in northern Scotland. But otherwise, largely dry and bright, but it is cold. Temperatures 5 to 8 degrees. Add on that wind and it feels even colder. It's through this evening we'll start to see the effects of the storm system arriving. Initially a band of rain pushing in with some snow over the hills across Scotland for a time. That zone of wet weather will then sink southwards during the night and become more extensive on Friday. Ahead of it, with clear skies, there will be a frost across the southeast, but quickly it'll cloud over on Friday morning, making for a grey, cold, fairly damp day with outbreaks of rain for most places, but the rain turning increasingly to snow over the hills of Scotland. And then the winds really start to pick up on Friday afternoon across the far north with frequent sleet and snow showers, and the gusty winds strengthening further. Temperatures a touch higher tomorrow, but it's still going to feel cold, especially as that wind picks up late in the day. Potential for damaging gusts of wind across the north and east of Scotland, especially on Friday afternoon and evening. And then through the evening, the winds strengthen further over northeast England, but also across north and west Wales, Northern Ireland and the west coast of Scotland. So Storm Arwen on the way, widespread gusts, disruption is possible. Keep up to date with the forecast. The warnings are on the Met Office website.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk. Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and